Hi, Gen Changers. We are so honored to be here with Dr. Naomi Rose. This is one of the most amazing experiences for me and a very huge highlight of this trip. We're also here with two Gen Changers who will be asking Dr. Rose some questions. Dr. Naomi Rose is a marine mammal biologist and has been working for over 30 years to end cetacean captivity, even in the face of total opposition of other scientists in her field. And we just want to say thank you so much for agreeing to this interview and letting us interview you. And this is such a fangirl moment for me.
Thanks.
One of the things that we really try to work with our Gen Changers at home who have never seen a wild cetacean, and we haven't either, we've never seen them in the wild, but have had the opportunities to go to marine parks, and they see this beautiful show with this music that swells and a trainer that's graceful and an animal that looks like it's enthralled with the whole process, to say, you know, that animal is very stressed, it's out of its natural environment, it's been plucked from its family. To truly express the stress of captivity is a difficult thing for us, so that we can really embed in these children who have embedded in them the idea that captivity is not an unsafe place. How do you think as Generation Change we can do that better?
I think one of the problems that whales and dolphins have is that they have a permanent smile. They always look like they're smiling. And the phrase I always use when I'm talking about these animals is they smile even when they're dead. Oh. And it's just a matter of morphology. It's just the shape of their skull. It has nothing to do with their mood. It's something that the marine parks have exploited. And they make them perform, and they're always smiling, so you assume they're happy. They don't have the same signals that dogs or cats give us. We know when a dog is distressed because it shivers, its tail goes down, its ears go back. Same with the cat. A cat looks angry, it hisses, its ears go back. You know, its tail puffs up when a cat or a dog is angry or upset or stressed. They don't have any of those signals. They don't have ears to go back. They don't have tails to go down. You know, you can't read a whale or a dolphin. Trainers can. Trainers learn the very subtle cues, very subtle to us. They learn them because they're working with them every day. They know that the animals are working with their stress, but they ignore it. Okay. You don't even know, because you don't know what you're looking for. Right. Because they are, in fact, aliens. They're aliens in the water. We don't know how to read them. This is a problem for these animals. They are exploited because they have these characteristics. And I think that if they were more like, for example, bears or even tigers, you know, when a lion tamer is training a tiger and it's hissing and it's scratching and clawing, you know it's not happy. Right. You know? You don't know that about a whale or dolphin. In fact, they're very similar. Okay, they're not meant to be doing what they're doing. It is a small box that they're being kept in. And that alone is stressful. It's not like the trainers are beating them or are mean to them. They're using relatively benign techniques to train them. They're very smart. They can be trained to do all sorts of things. But the main problem they have, and that's one of the fairies, the main problem they have is they are bored literally to death. And I think young people can understand that. Yeah. If you've got nothing to do, nowhere to go, nobody who understands you to talk to, it's deathly, literally deathly. And this is what's happening to these incredibly intelligent, incredibly social animals who are huge and travel these long distances in nature. They're put into a little box, and they're told to do the same thing over and over and over and over and over again.
I think one of the most powerful slides I ever saw was when you presented the picture of how far they can actually swim, and then up right in the corner is literally the largest tank in the world, which is Orlando, and
it's a dot.
And the swim line of the orca is just like amazing, and and that to me, because I'm a visual learner, I'm not a scientist, was like, oh my god.
And that really is important for people to understand that that's the problem. Again, trainers aren't torturing the animals, they're not beating them, they're not cruel to them. They are making them do something in a space that is completely unnatural. Yeah. They are not being allowed to exhibit their true nature. And that, for an intelligent person, if you were forced to never express your true nature, you had to pretend to be something else every moment of your life, you'd get depressed, you'd get sick, you might die young. That's exactly what happens to these animals. They get depressed, their immune system suffers, they get some infection and they die. It's again, it's not cruelty so much as inhumanity. It's just not in their best interests.
Right. Because it's innate for them to have these long, straight traveling lines.
What's the point of having all these amazing adaptations, echolocation, powerful flukes that you can travel 100 miles in a day? You can go down to 800 feet. You can hold your breath for 20 minutes. What's the point of any of that if you're put in a box that's this big?
And that's what I tried to explain to Evie's class with regards to the same presentation you gave about polar bears being one of the top 5 that should not be in captivity. We're from Philadelphia, and we have one of the first zoos.
Yeah, and they have polar bears.
Well, we lost the polar bear.
Yeah.
And so when the class went, I was obligatory class mom, and I had to go, which I went under duress. But what I did when I went was vocalize that the polar bear is meant to travel 60 miles a day straight to hunt. It's innate. So so that word sometimes gets fuzzy with kids, and I say, if you don't eat every day, bad things happen. You get sick. You become fatigued. Often your body will rot. You will start to lose muscle mass and eventually die. So when you take things that are innate away from these creatures, bad things happen to them. Right. And that's something that we really try to drive home to these kids.
That's exactly it.
And recently there was a bill that was passed that was pretty significant, and that bill is AB 2305.
Right.
And that has been something you guys have been working to get passed for a really long time. And I was wondering if you could explain a little bit to the Gen Changers at home.
Absolutely. Just a few years ago, we couldn't even have imagined legislative change. We wouldn't have found a sympathetic politician who was willing to take the risk of changing everything with a bill like this. Now we've got politicians coming out of the woodwork, which is great. So we have a champion in California, Mr. Richard Bloom, Assemblyman Richard Bloom, and he decided to introduce a bill that would make it illegal to breed, import, export, or perform any captive orca. So what will happen over time is it will disappear because they won't be producing anymore and they won't be bringing any more in. And you might say, well, why doesn't he just outlaw it right away? Why doesn't he just make it illegal right off the bat? Well, there's 11 orcas in California, and something has to be done for them. And so they can't be returned to the wild. Most of them have been born in captivity. So what are their options? And just throwing them back into the ocean isn't an option. And so he needed to keep that in mind. So instead of just telling SeaWorld, you have to shut down tomorrow, he's giving them 30 to 40 years, because the youngest animal has just been born, to transition, to phase into something new. And that, to me, is so rational, so reasonable. And still, SeaWorld isn't happy about it. But as we all know, in March, they made an announcement that they themselves will voluntarily, even before the bill is passed, end their breeding program. The handwriting is on the wall. They know it now.
Yeah. So is that including Loropaco, or?
It is any SeaWorld whale, and they still own all the whales at Loro Parque.
Oh, wow. And they admit to that now?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so that's...
No, they never didn't admit that they own the whales at Loro Parque. They've always owned the whales at Loro Parque. What they didn't admit to is whether they had a really close relationship with Loro Parque. And the point was how can you not have a close relationship with a facility that's holding your whales? Right. Of course you have a close relationship with them.
So that's so big. I mean, just
so yes, it covers every whale they own, and they will not expand orca exhibits to any expansion that they make in abroad in other countries. So if they open a new park in Dubai,
really,
then they will have no orcas there.
Oh, I had no idea. Okay,
yeah. They made that
fantastic.
That's the commitment they've made. We have to make them stick to it.
Right, of course.
It's better if we pass legislation so they can't ever back out of it. Corporate policy can change.
Right,
so if they bring in a new CEO or whatever, so we will make them stick to that pledge. But they made it very publicly. If they back out of it now, they're going to look very bad.
Of course, so, yeah. Wow, that's amazing. And you were so instrumental in that. And
you're been a long time coming. Yeah.
I mean, you're an unsung hero. I mean, I know you fought the good fight. I mean, to take the risk you took in your field is just truly amazing. I mean, it just shows the power of one. And I mean, you're just brilliant, and you're strong. I mean, I was a little scared to interview you. I was like, I have to know I need to know when she was born. I need to know everything. But no, I mean, you're just brilliant, and you're an unsung hero. And the truth is that you were the first of your kind screaming into the wind, and now people are
It is
listening.
amazing for me because, you know, when I started, I really was pretty isolated. Fortunately, I don't really care what people think of me, so that's a good characteristic to have when you do something like this. But now that I'm surrounded by like-minded people and more of my colleagues are joining me, and that's been really like soul restoring. I mean, it's hard to explain, but when you are, you know, whistling in the wind and feel like you're kind of out there all by yourself, and suddenly you turn around and there's a whole community behind you, that's pretty energizing. Yeah.
So when you talk about SeaWorld, you know, like being fair to SeaWorld and giving them time to transition, you know, social media is a huge thing for us at Generation Change. It's really the only way we are able to get our message out, and really our only way to ask people to support us, even through a like or a share. We get a lot of pushback, which is wonderful because debate is healthy. But sometimes, because I'm not a scientist, I have to say, yeah, I'm going to have to get back to you. I'm going to have to research it. I don't want to say something wrong. I don't want to say something that wasn't peer reviewed. Can you give me a day? And I think I'm fair in that. When I really don't have the literature, I don't know what to say. So I had someone come at me very strongly from Awesome Ocean, saying that, you know, I was sort of like a dumb girl who saw a documentary and thinks that I'm going to make a difference, and that sanctuaries, well, he calls them pens, but I know that that's not an appropriate word, are noisy, unstable, often become loose. Where are they? There's just not enough, and funding is ridiculous, and there's more noise under the ocean. And at that time, well, I still am a little ignorant to it. I mean, I'm still reading about it. And at that time I had said to him, look, I'm not there yet. I haven't read all that there is to read. I'd be willing to interview you, but can you give me a couple days to get back to you, and I'll spend nights throughout the night reading and researching. But maybe you could speak a little bit about why it's not a ridiculous notion to say sea pen or sea sanctuary.
I mean, there's several reasons. One of which is there are already sea pen facilities, dolphinariums that are sea pens. Partners with SeaWorld, facilities that Awesome Ocean supports. There's at least 3 or 4 in the United States, and there's a lot more abroad. In the Caribbean, there's a dozen sea pen facilities. These are smaller sea pens than what we're envisioning for sanctuary, but the engineering concepts, the actual engineering and logistical issues that arise by trying to put an enclosure in natural habitat, that's all been worked out.
Okay.
It's established. It's been established for decades. To say that sea pens are ludicrous or ridiculous, they're actually throwing half their industry under the bus, which I find pretty funny because they've actually angered a lot of industry people who run sea pen facilities. And we've been getting some constructive feedback from them on how to avoid some of the mistakes they've made in the past. So without any effort on our part, SeaWorld has made friends for us in the most unlikely places within the industry itself, because they're sitting there going, oh, God, SeaWorld just threw us under the bus. And they're very unhappy about it. So that's one thing. It's already out there. Sea pens are already out there. That's not a new concept. The fact that we're going to build these sea pens, they will be sea pens, but they'll be very much larger than any existing sea pen, on a completely different business model. Yes, that's never been done before. And we need to think about things like, how will we continue to be able to give them veterinary care? How will we keep them from getting bored? Remember I said that boredom is a really serious problem? These are intelligent animals. We're saying you're not going to be performing anymore. Well, what will they do to fill their day? They still won't have to hunt their own food, although if they catch live fish, I think that will be enrichment. That's what we call it. That's what the zoo community calls it. It's called enrichment. You know, we want to enrich their lives. Their lives are very impoverished right now. We want to enrich their lives. How will we do that? Well, they'll be in natural habitat. That will help. The idea that sea pens are noisy, the ocean is noisy. It's naturally noisy.
Exactly.
I mean, sea tanks are full of noises like pumps and construction noise and the distant hum of cars on the interstate. Fireworks. It's really, you know, it's to me, the arguments that Awesome Ocean and other groups like that are pro-cap, that they offer in defense of what SeaWorld does, are desperate arguments that are easily rebutted because facts are facts.
Yeah.
Like I said, sea pens exist. They're your allies, your colleagues. Did you just throw them under the bus? I mean, what's your problem? So it's a very interesting situation watching desperate people sort of
Yeah.
they're desperate, and they're actually striking out in ways that are hurting themselves.
Yeah.
And as I've always said, you know, with enemies like that, who needs friends? I mean, I'm actually not doing that much right now in terms of arguing with them. I'm busy now building a sanctuary.
Right, of course.
I've moved on. I mean, the handwriting's already on the wall. The end is nigh.
Yeah.
I spent 20 years arguing with them and formulating arguments and doing all of that. My job is done as far as that's concerned. Now I'm moving on to, we're winning. We have to have a solution. Let's make one.
It must be amazing for you to see that.
Oh, I didn't
it's
think it
like
would
your
happen in my
life's
lifetime.
work.
Yeah, no,
but
it
I mean,
absolutely didn't
must
think it would
be
happen in my lifetime.
Just absolutely amazing
Yeah,
to
yeah.
know that it wasn't for nothing. You know that
Yeah, no,
some people don't get to see
I was
the
just
end
going to say,
result.
I don't think a lot of people
No, they don't.
get
They
that
often
in their, you know,
people-
that kind of closure. Oh, I succeeded, you know, in a very long-term goal.
Yeah.
Often you die before you get there, and I'm very aware of how lucky
shows
I
how
am.
amazing you are.
This is well, okay.
I mean, it does. I mean, I'm honored to meet
I-
you. Like when you answered me, I mean, I was
Thank
like,
you.
Naomi Rose, and you know, no one in my world, and I'm like, no one gets it. No
No.
one gets it. I wanted to
thanks.
find somebody to like be excited with.
Yeah,
but-
it's a small world. It's a small world.
So we do have two gen changers with us today. One last thing we did want to say to the people at home is Osmotion had sent lots of mothers and fathers at me about how well, now my kids will never see orcas. Thanks. So this is what we want to say. Generation Change is based in Philadelphia, but we would never deny a child. If we can raise funds, we will take any child with family to see a natural a cetacean in their natural environment. We'll find a way to get to you. We'll beg. We'll plead. I worked 5 weekends straight to pay for this trip. I would never deny a single child the experience to see a cetacean in the wild. Even if you're from Canada, I'll do my best.
And I also think that, you know, the kids instinctively understand, I think, that sometimes you just don't get what you want.
Right.
And
Not my kids, but other kids get
and,
the
and if what you want is at the expense of another being's welfare, not, you know, just another person, but any being that has, you know, can suffer. If what you want is at the expense of that being's welfare, then you really ought to think about that. I mean, not necessarily say no to it, although I think you should, but, you know, at least think about it.
Yeah.
At least be aware of what you're proposing. So for somebody to argue, you're denying that child the opportunity to ever see an orca, I'm like, yes, because to see an orca easily at the local dolphinarium, that orca has to suffer.
Exactly, yeah. No, you're absolutely
yeah.
right. You're absolutely right. So they have written two questions each. I know you have a time constraint. I mean, they each have one question.
Great.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, I got it. Yeah.
I know you have a time constraint, and they'll ask it fast. These are the original Gen Changers.
Oh, great.
This is what we started with. It grew. Then it downsized. Then it grew again.
All right.
And we're trying. But
Okay, go ahead.
So most Gen Changers and most kids even out of Gen Change have never got to see a cetacean in the wild. Not a marine park or SeaWorld, but in the wild. And we would like to know how you felt and what you saw when you saw even a killer whale, a whale in the wild. And maybe you can explain to some kids and people out there what they might feel and what they might see and do when they see one.
Well, when
For the
I
first
was,
time she
oh,
went,
absolutely
so-
no. When I was quite young, maybe 6 or 11, I did go to a dolphinarium and I saw some dolphins. I don't actually remember it very well because what I remember is this really cool pirate ship that we got to run around on, and it was, you know, docked in harbor, and there was a captain on board. He was a pirate captain. It was all very fun. That's what I remember. I don't actually remember the animals very well. And then when I was 13, I saw something on television that made me want to be a marine biologist. And so the first time I actually saw a wild dolphin doing what wild dolphins do, I was 19. So that this big long gap where I just read a lot of books and did a lot of research, and I saw some whales. I went whale watching, but I didn't see any dolphins on that whale watch. So when I was 19, I went out to sea as a college student, and I saw dolphins riding the bow of our boat. and I'd never seen anything like that. It was everything I thought it would be and extra. I mean, I can't explain it. It was like, you just go.
Your heart jumps.
Because that's a type of freedom, which is really what we're taking away from them. That is a type of freedom that we cannot imagine because we are earthbound. We can run fast, we can fly in a plane, but these dolphins go 40 miles per hour all by themselves in the open ocean. And they're not afraid. They know exactly where they are. They're not at risk of drowning. They're mammals. They breathe air, but they're at home there.
Exactly.
And that is something we can't really put our minds in the water with them and imagine. So that's as best as it gets. You sort of hanging over the side of the ship, and you're just imagining it, and it's truly amazing. So yeah, I mean, when there is not, I've never seen anybody on a whale watch boat who finally sees the whale come up and go, and not go.
Oh my God! I hope we get to see that.
That'd be amazing.
It would be so cool.
So your question.
Do you have any advice for people of the next generation that do not know much about this or do not know anything at all?
Well,
Advice on how to get involved?
yeah, no, how to get involved and how to learn more. I mean, you always have to learn more. And that's hard. It takes some effort on your part. You know, it's not going to just, you're not going to just be able to absorb it. We're trying to provide as many resources as we possibly can. That's my job. My job is to provide the resources. It's your job to consume those resources. And if you don't, well, I can't make you learn. And so my advice to young people is, if you're interested, you know, maybe you'll be interested in something else. Maybe you'll be interested in sports. Maybe you'll be interested in human rights. Maybe you'll be interested in, you know, just in, protecting the environment. Maybe you'll be interested in plants. Maybe you'll be interested in something else. But if you're interested in this, then you have to make some effort to consume my resources. I will do my very best to provide you with, if you're 5, if you're 10, if you're 15, to provide you with resources that are appropriate for your age, but you have to make the effort to consume them, because I can't come to your house and make you do it. And hopefully your parents will help you, hopefully your siblings will help you, hopefully your friends will help you, hopefully your teachers will help you, but you do have to make the effort in the end. And you know, I just can't emphasize that enough. These animals need you. You need to do something to help them. You can't just sit there and hope that your good intentions will help them. So.
And that is exactly what we want to be. We want to be the bridge between the source and the information and the kids, because again, some of our kids don't have computers or access, you know, so we bring it in to them.
Right. I mean, the resources can be anything. They can be video, they can be books, they can be pamphlets, they can be plays, they can be songs, they can be anything. I will work very hard to make sure those resources are available, but you know, I can't make anybody consume them, you know, so I need help. And in the end, it's all up to everybody.
Yeah.
Individuals, they have to do it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
This has been absolutely amazing. Gen Changers, this is unprecedented, and I cannot thank Dr. Rose enough. She is one of the heroes of this movement. She has fought harder than I can even imagine, and we just want to thank her. And I think we owe it to her as the next generation and teaching the next generation to not let this fight go. We maintain it and we preserve it, and we ensure that this planet is protected the way it needs to be. Thank you so
You're welcome.
much, Dr. Rose.
Thank you.